Hello and welcome to my channel. You're watching What Helen Reads and I'm Helen. Today I've got another romance recommendation video for you. So in today's video I've got some of my favourite auction romance books for you. So I'm actually filming this at the end of March and I don't think it's going to go up till around the middle of April, but I've just finished reading Sara Cate's new book, The Highest Bidder, which is book 5 in the Salacious Players Club, and this really inspired me to talk about not only this book but some other books with similar themes. I rated this one 4 stars and I really liked it. So the hero in this book is Ronan, and he's a slightly older man. He's in his late 50s and he is a member of the Salacious Players Club, and we've seen him in some of the other books. So his backstory is that he had a wife and son, and unfortunately they were killed in a car accident 28 years before. And since then he has met several women who he's fallen in love with, but it's never really stuck, and he's always been left heartbroken. And in fact, 9 years before, he meets a lady called Shannon, and they have a whirlwind romance which lasts about 6 weeks, and he's desperately in love with her. But Shannon has a daughter, and she lives on the other side of the country because she's just in California for business. And at the end of the summer, she basically leaves him to go and care for her daughter, and so their relationship ends. But Ronan is really soft-hearted and kind-hearted, and he leaves and he gives her $1 million for her daughter, and the mum invests this money for the daughter so she can get through college. Now we wind on 9 years, and basically the daughter is the heroine and she is Daisy, and her mother unfortunately has passed away about 3 years before. Her mother passed away when Daisy was just 18, and she's been really struggling with her grief ever since. Now, she didn't know about this money, but one day she's looking through her mother's things and she comes across some paperwork that basically indicates that she's been left $1 million by this man called Ronan, and therefore she decides that she's going to go investigate further to find out who this man is and why he gave her mum the money for her. So she makes her way back to California and finds herself working at the Salacious Players Club, where she's been for about 3 months and kind of keeping her eye on Ronan. Now she's got she is very much attracted to Ronan, but struggles at first with the age difference. There's a 35-year age difference between them. And she's not really planning on doing anything about this attraction, but she is obviously just still keeping her eye on him to figure out what's been going on. Now, she's got a friend at the club called Gio, and he works behind the bar, and one night they make a bit of a bet, and if she loses she's going to have to put herself up at the next charity auction, which she does lose the bet, which means that she ends up being at the charity auction, and Ronan is the one that actually bids on her, and he bids on her for an hour of her time, but he knows that she's really young, and he's struggling because that day is the anniversary of his wife's death. And so he's not really up for spending any time with her or to take her back to his room. So he basically takes a rain check and goes home. Now that same night he's walking out and finds that she's living in her van, and he doesn't want to see her living on the street, so he insists that she goes back to his apartment with him, and he very much looks after her. Now Ronan is obviously going to the Salacious Players Club. He's actually a dom, and he's a pleasure dom, but he's also has a bit of daddy kink. He likes to be called daddy, and she very much likes to call him daddy and tease him, and obviously one thing leads to another. They start a sexual relationship, and she then starts to realise that she's fallen for him, but she's got this secret that she's kept, and she's very much concerned about what will happen when he finds out, and he's very reluctant because he's kind of given up on love. The women that he's met he doesn't really trust because he thinks they're mainly after him for his money, because he's also a billionaire, and so he's swept away by this girl, head over heels for her, and takes good care of her, but he's also very concerned that their romance won't last and he'll be left heartbroken once more. So that is basically the premise of the story, and I don't want to share any more because I think it will definitely be a spoiler. But if you love the rest of the books in the Salacious Players Club, I'd highly recommend this book. It is a great addition to the story so far. I'm very much looking forward to the next book in the series, which is going to be Madam, about Eden, and that'll be her book. So I'm really looking forward to that. I don't think this one was the strongest one in the series, but I did really enjoy it, and like I say, it does revolve around an auction, which very much inspired this video. So the next book I want to recommend is The Auction by Maggie Cole, and this is also a relatively recent release. It came out in February, and it's book 1 in the Club Indulgence duet. It does end with a cliffhanger, and you do have to read the second book, but I absolutely loved the first book, which was called The Auction, and I gave it 5 stars. It's one of the only one of 3 5-star ratings that I've given out so far this year. I absolutely loved it and would highly recommend. So in this one we're following Riggs and Blakely. Again, Riggs is a slightly older man, and he is a business partner of Blakely's dad. So basically he is younger than her dad, but much older than her, about 15 years. There's a 15-year age gap. But he's known her since she was a teenager, and Blakely's always had a secret crush on Riggs. She really is very much attracted to him, and when she turns 18 she does try and make a move, but Riggs kind of declines. But the relationship with her parents is not that great, and they're trying to force her into an arranged marriage, but she doesn't want, so she kind of goes on the run, and she's missing for some years. And one day her father's goons are catching up to her and actually end up finding her, and then sort of kidnapping her to take her back to her dad. And on the way the car breaks down, they get a flat tire, and she has an opportunity to escape. And where does she escape to but across the road into a sex club where a sex auction is taking place. In her sort of like haste and confusion, she's a bit flustered, and the fact that she's trying to get away from her dad's goons, she ends up agreeing to be part of the auction. And of course Riggs is there and buys her at the auction. Now he can't believe his luck, because he thinks that she's into the same things as him, and he's very much a dom and is looking for his next submissive. But of course she's only there by mistake, because she was trying to get away from her would-be kidnappers, and so their kind of relationship starts from there, and it goes from there. So like I say, this one is a really good read, full of angst and drama. It's a 2-book series though, so basically make sure you are prepared for the cliffhanger at the end and get ready to download the second book, which I also highly recommend. So the third book I want to recommend is Savage Daddy by Bianca Cole, and this one is a mafia romance, and it's book 2 in the Boston Mafia Dons series. This was my favourite series that Bianca Cole has written, and this is my favourite book in that series. We're following the hero in this one called Malachi, and in the first book he is very much the villain, and we don't like him at all, and we're not even sure how he's going to redeem himself. He is known to be the craziest, wildest, cruelest of the mafia dons in Boston. And he is part of the Irish Mafia, or is head of the Irish Mafia in Boston. So the heroine in this one is Scarlett, and she's desperate for money because her mother is ill, and she borrowed some money from a loan shark in order to pay for some treatment, and now they need to pay the loan shark back. And so she decides that she's going to sell the only commodity that she's got, which is her virginity. So she enters herself into a virgin auction, and Malachi loves to buy virgins because he is a very cruel man with specific sexual appetites and tastes, and he likes to buy a virgin and basically break them in and break them essentially, and he'll use them until he's had enough and he's bored, and then he'll discard them. But when he sees Scarlett at the auction, he's completely drawn to her, and there's something different about her than any of the previous women that he's bought. And of course he wins the bid and takes her home. Now she thinks he's just going to have her for one night and that'll be the end of that, but Malachi has got other ideas, and she finds that she is now his captive, and he's not going to let her go until he's had everything that he wants from her and completely broken her down. What I love about this is that Malachi, like I said, is a very cruel person, and in book 1 we see how savage he can actually be, but he's got a soft side, he's got a soft centre, and even though he does do some cruel things to Scarlett, ultimately he doesn't push her as far as he would push some of the other virgins that he would buy, and he can't quite bring himself to break her completely because he wants to keep her for himself. So the next one I'm going to recommend is Bought by the Beast by Lexi Hart. And this one is a 4-star read, and it's book 1 in the Wicked Dynasty series. Now, Lexi Hart wrote this book in 2019 and it was her only book up until recently. This first book, for it being a debut novel, is absolutely fantastic and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's also a Beauty and the Beast retelling. So if you haven't watched it yet, check out my Beauty and the Beast retellings recommendation. But this does involve an auction. So we're following Daisy and Dimitri. And so Dimitri in this one is a scarred hero. He works for the Russian mafia, and he was rescued by the head of the Russian mafia when he was just a boy, and then basically trained to kind of be the enforcer. And he is the scariest man in the city and everyone's afraid of him. He's had his eye on Daisy for a while, and unfortunately for Daisy, her dad's got into a bit of trouble and owes the Russian mafia some money, and she ends up at a virgin auction in order to pay off her father's debt. And Dimitri is the one that buys her, and at first she is bought for a week. So basically he gets to have her for the week, and he takes her to his secret cabin in the woods, and that is basically where their kind of romance kicks off and blooms, and it kind of goes from there. So like I said, I absolutely love this one. It's another mafia romance. It's also a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and I would highly recommend. So the next one is another book called Highest Bidder, but this one is by Georgia Le Carre, and it's a standalone book, so it's not part of a series, and I rated this one 4 stars. In this one we're following Freya and Brent. Now Freya is from a very high class family, they're quite wealthy, and her mother is very much a socialite. But unfortunately her dad's business is not doing very well, and when it completely folds he ends up committing suicide, and that leaves her and her mother in a bit of a financial mess. But her mother is so used to the socialite lifestyle, she can't help but continue to spend the money until the point where they are nearly going to be evicted from their home. Freya is left with only one option, which is to raise some money. She has to sell her virginity at a sex auction. So Freya puts herself up for auction at this charity auction, and she doesn't know who's bid on her at first, and then she discovers that it's actually Brent who's bid on her. Now Brent is not a stranger to her. She's known him for a long time, and in fact she's been in love with him secretly for about 10 years. But Brett is the son of a duke, so he's a lord, and he is very, very wealthy. And they're very attracted to each other. So she cannot believe her luck that he's the one that's bought her. And they do spend a night together, but then after that they go their separate ways. But of course their romance doesn't end there. It's only just beginning, and through the course of several scenes and scenarios they continue to bump into each other until eventually they do end up starting a relationship. But it's not all plain sailing, because Brent has a brother who is very competitive and is trying to split them up, and he's also got a scheming ex-girlfriend who is doing everything she can as well to get in the way of the relationship and win him back. So the next one I want to recommend is Bought by Colleen, and this is book 4 in her Naughty Little Book series, and it's a very fast-paced short series of 4 novellas. Now I rated this one 3 stars, which means I liked it, and one of the reasons it didn't get a higher star rating is because it is only a short book, and therefore it is quite insta-lovey. But it does revolve around an auction. It's a best friends to lovers romance, and it was fun and quick to read, with some sexy scenes, and I would highly recommend if you just want, you know, a bit of a palate cleanser, or you know, just a very quick read. So what's this one about? So basically in this one we're following Rush and Emma, and like I said, they've been best friends since they were 6 years old. Now Rush is in love with Emma, but she doesn't know it, so basically he's very much kept it secret about how he feels about her. But he happens to be rich, and she has recently graduated from college and is an engineer, but she's come away from college with a 6-figure debt, a student debt. And he's offered to help her out and pay off the debt, but she obviously refuses. But then she hears about an auction where she can sell off her virginity in exchange for cash. And she thinks this is a really, really great option. And of course, when she tells Rush about it, he's not happy at all, because he doesn't like the thought of her being with another man, because he wants her for himself. Now this is not a normal auction situation. She doesn't get up on stage and is bid on sort of like in public with cash. It's kind of an online auction, and she gets the opportunity to speak to the men that maybe want to buy her and kind of pick the person that she's going to be with. And Rush makes sure that he sets up an online account and starts talking to her, pretending to be someone else. And of course they get into this exchange. They fall in love with each other online, or she falls in love with him because obviously he's already in love with her, but she falls in love with the person that she's speaking to online. And of course, when ultimately he's the one that actually buys her and she finds out it's him and that he's loved her all this time, that is kind of the main plot and where this kind of story is heading. So like I say, if you like a fast-paced romance that gets to the point very quickly, but it does revolve around an auction, then I would highly recommend Bought by Colleen Charles. Okay, so they're all of these sort of like contemporary auctions, if you like, or things set on our planet. And now I'm going to move off-world. And the next book I'm going to recommend is Sold to the Alien Smugglers by Corin Cain. And so this is an alien sci-fi romance, but it also revolves around an auction. So in this one, it's book 4 of the Captive Mate series. And in this one, we're following Jamie, who is the heroine, and she's human. And then we're following an Aurelian triad. So basically the Aurelians are an alien species that operate in triads. So basically they are bonded, each male is bonded to 2 other males, so there's 3 of them. Yeah, and so these men are Marcel, Lucius and Quinn, and they're a triad, and they are looking for their fated mate. So in this one we're following Jamie, and she's a human, and she has been recently abducted by the Toads, which are a bad alien species. So she has been kidnapped by these Toads and she's been put up for auction. Now the Aurelians, like I say, they operate in a triad and they're looking for their fated mate. Now, it's really, really rare that the Aurelian species actually come across their fated mate. In fact, it hasn't happened for centuries, and so this race of alien creatures are becoming quite desperate to find their mates in order to make sure that they can continue their species. Now, they are smugglers and they happen to be on the Toad ship, and they smell this woman who they have a very strong suspicion is their mate. So when she comes up for auction, they very much make sure that they buy her, and then they kind of take her with them. So it's not so much that they rescue her, but they kind of like exchange property, if you like, and they pay the Toads to take her for themselves. So sticking with the alien theme, we've now got Brutal Mate by Lee Savino and Tabitha Black, and this is book 1 in the Planet of Kings series. In this one we're following Emma and Cain. Now this is a very traditional alien abduction romance, where Emma is actually abducted from Earth while she's actually trying to get into a BDSM club, interestingly enough, but she gets turned away. And as she gets turned away, because her name's not on the list, she can't get in that night, she basically walks home, but only to walk into a portal, and she goes through into this sort of alien realm, if you like. When she goes through this portal, she's kind of captured by these other aliens who are then going to put her up for auction, and she's kind of rescued by our hero called Cain. But he doesn't really rescue her. Again, it's a very similar situation to the one before. He is an alpha, he's looking for his omega, he strongly suspects that she's the one for him, and so he kind of rescues her from this auction by buying her for himself and taking her back to his planet to keep her captive and hopefully mate with her and marry her and then have children. Now on his planet, being chosen by a king to be his mate and to have his children is very much an honour. But of course she's having none of it, and she fights him every step of the way. And at first he's very much an alpha hole because he's dominant and tries to force her to come around and mate with him and have his children, and she very much pushes him away. But he has a very soft centre and he tries everything he can to make her happy being with him on the planet, and he's very much hoping that she's going to change her mind. So again, if you like a relatively quick, fast-paced alien romance that involves an auction, then I would recommend that you look into Brutal Mate. And then the last one I want to talk about is The Dragon's Bride by Katee Robert. So this one is a monster romance and is book 1 in A Deal with the Devil. So in this one, the heroine is Briar and the hero is Sol. Now, Briar lives presumably on Earth. It seems like it's our planet as we know it. And she has a very, very dangerous husband who's very abusive towards her, and she knows that she needs to get out of the relationship. And she's so desperate to get out of this relationship, she makes a deal with the devil, or a demon shall I say, and the demon agrees to help her get rid of her husband, i.e. kill him, in exchange for going to his realm for 7 years and basically giving herself to 7 years of service. Now she assumes that this service is going to be some kind of backbreaking work, being a maid maybe, or somehow a slave or something. But actually what he wants is to put her up for auction where a monster can buy her. Now she happens to be bought by Sol, who is a dragon man. So basically he's a dragon monster who's very humanoid, looks like a man, or has got very humanoid features, but is very much a dragon. And he very much wants her as his mate, as his wife, and to bear him children. Of course the deal here is that after the 7 years she does have to go back to her own realm, so back to Earth, and so she is reluctant obviously to start a relationship with him to bear children, knowing that she's going to have to leave them behind. And also at first obviously she's very scared of the fact that this guy is in fact a dragon. So it's really it was one of the first monster romances that I actually read. I thought it was very interesting and sweet, and I liked how this resolved. And again, this is a pretty short book at just 190 pages, so if you like just a fast-paced quick read, a monster alien romance that revolves around an auction, then The Dragon's Bride is a good place to start. So there you have it. There are all my auction romance recommendations. I hope you found something that you can add to your TBR. If you've got a recommendation yourself that I didn't mention, please put it down in the comments box below. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much for watching to the end. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and remember to subscribe to my channel if you want to see more content from me. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. That's what I always say. I'm not sure I'm very peppy and bouncy today. Yeah, just change that ending because basically, so the woman that's going to complete their triad and make them a quintet, I guess. Quartet? Quartet. So the next one, so Freya goes, so Freya put, yeah, so the heroine in this one is Scarlet, and she is absolutely desperate for money. Oh, I got an itch. So in this one we follow, and he is very much a daddy dom, a pleasure dom, and he does not want to see her. That's not the reason he picks her up though.